morning. My name is Kelly O'Brien, and I am the president of the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance Foundation and the Chief Advocacy and Strategy Officer. We really appreciate you starting your day with us and joining us for this conversation today on how do we prepare for the future of work. We know that we're living in this time of disruption, and so two of our collaboratives, the Talent Collaborative and the Research Collaborative, work together to bring these fantastic speakers. And I can tell you that during the prep session, I was riveted by some of the insights that they shared. And I think that you will really enjoy hearing them look into a crystal ball and help us understand some of the things that we may be approaching and things that we can do to prepare for it. There will be an opportunity for your questions to be asked and answered. So use the chat function for that. And I am going to dive right into introducing today's panel. First, I'd like to introduce Tara Beck with Amazon. And Tara is currently the Senior Staffing Manager for Amazon in the Charlotte region. She has experience across a number of industries, including retail, manufacturing, college athletics, and she has an expertise in leadership, talent acquisition, skilled workforce development, program management, and nonprofit fundraising. She holds a bachelor's degree from Michigan State University, a master's degree from Northern Illinois University, and is currently pursuing an MBA from the University of Nebraska. It really sounds like you've got a lot of Midwest roots there with your education. In her free time, which it's hard to imagine that you have, but Tara sits on the North Carolina Women in Manufacturing Board as the vice chair and enjoys anything related to the outdoors. So good morning, Tara, and let me ask you, as today is the first day of fall, not the first official full day, but the day that fall starts, what is your favorite fall activity?
Hey, good morning, Kelly. Thank you so much for having me today. As I shared, I really love the outdoors. So fall color tours, driving through the mountains or the Midwest to see all the leaves change is really a fun part of my fall.
Terrific. Well, thank you for joining us. We're looking forward to your insights. Next, I would like to introduce Phil Kuttner with Little. As the Chief Executive Officer, Phil collaborates to create an evolving, ambitious vision for Little that motivates the staff and creates a competitive advantage for their clients. He is responsible for maintaining a culture of empowered people who are enthusiastic collaborators and who are great at using their imaginations. A 30-year veteran of the practice, Phil earned his Bachelor of Science in Design and Master of Architecture from Clemson University. He has been a featured speaker at numerous conferences, including the AIA National Convention and Inc. Magazine's CEO Symposium. He has also served on multiple AIA Design Award juries. Good morning, Phil. So of course I have to ask you, what is your favorite fall activity?
It used to be watching Clemson's offense, but this year I think I'm going to see Tara up in the mountains watching the color change and enjoying those crisp fall mornings.
Excellent. Well, that does. As a recent transplant here, I can't wait to see the fall foliage in the mountains myself. Now, our next speaker, Kathy Patterson. Kathy was named the Chief Human Resource Officer at Ally Financial in August of 2016. In this role, she is responsible for overseeing the company's human capital, talent management, compensation, benefits, well-being, internal communication, and cultural efforts, ensuring they support the organization's overall strategic objectives and drive Ally's efforts to be a leading employer of choice. Kathy earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Michigan and a Master of Arts degree from the University of Detroit Mercy in Industrial Organizational Psychology. I have friends from Michigan State and from the University of Michigan, so I know that can be a big rivalry. I think we'll put that aside today. And Kathy, can you please share your favorite fall activity?
Good morning, Kelly. Thank you for having me here today on the panel. I have to say, living still in Michigan, probably it's the changing of the leaves and just sort of feeling that fall changing of the wardrobe, as well as college football. I'd be remiss to say that the college football and the tailgating is probably one of the better parts of the fall.
All right. Well, you and I are on the same page on that one. And then we have Lindsey Powers. Lindsey is a Senior Vice President of People for Premier and is responsible for human resources, organizational development, talent management, and facilities. With over 17 years of human resource experience, Lindsey has established herself as a trusted advisor, thought partner, and leader within her space. She is passionate about driving organizational effectiveness in an ever-evolving workforce through innovation and practical application. Lindsey earned her BA in communications from Keene State College. Good morning, Lindsey, and you know what's coming. What is your favorite fall activity?
Hey, good morning. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me. I'll go with the theme, although I'll switch it up. I am from the Northeast originally. I am a transplant, so I'm not huge into college ball, but I am huge into my New England Patriots, and I love when the season kicks off. I also do love to take my kids apple picking and getting the apple cider donuts for the first time in the autumn. So kind of two-pronged.
All right, excellent. And then our moderator today is Dr. Laura Stanley. And Dr. Stanley is an associate professor in the Department of Management in the Bell College of Business at UNC Charlotte. I know that we're rebranding and UNC Charlotte is now being referenced as Charlotte, and we're so very pleased for our strong partnership. Her work has appeared in such journals as Entrepreneurship, Theory and Practice, the Journal of Vocational Behavior and Human Performance. She currently serves on the editorial board of Journal of Vocational Behavior. Previously, Dr. Stanley worked for Deloitte & Touche, Arthur Andersen, and Aon Consulting as an auditor and later human resource management consultant. She received her PhD in management from the University of Georgia. Dr. Stanley, we are so appreciative that you will be moderating today's panel. And of course, I know that our viewers would like to know, what is your favorite fall activity?
Well, thank you so much, Kelly, for the opportunity and for inviting me to be a part of this panel. I'm really looking forward to it. Favorite fall activity would have to be carving pumpkins with my son. And I also look forward to the lower humidity, or at least what we Southerners consider to be lower humidity.
Well, I all sounds excellent to me. And Dr. Stanley, I know that we're going to kick things off and you're going to help the panelists share their insights with the audience. And I know that, we're living in this time of disruption and some really key important points that we want to touch on. What is this great resignation and what is the role of technology with remote work? What are some trends with attracting and retaining talent? And I know we've got Phil, as a subject matter expert here to give us a better understanding of what offices are going to look like, post-COVID. So I'm going to hand it off to you and really look forward to learning all about that and more.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kelly. So I'd like to welcome everyone to our panel on the future of work. I'd like to thank everyone for being here and also for the opportunity to moderate the panel. So I'd like to start out with a question about how we define the future of work. What changes are we envisioning? Are we thinking about changes in what we do, the nature of work, in how much we do, or where we do it, the location? And this may vary by organization. So healthcare organizations may describe the future of work very differently from retailers or from consulting firms or banks. A variety of organizations and industries are represented on our panel today. So I'd like to ask each of our panelists, how do you define the future of work for your employees and your organizations?
I can jump in. I think that the future of work is going to be flexible. I think that is probably the word that sticks out most prominently as we hear both from the employer side of the equation and the employee side of the equation. I think what's really interesting is that everyone has been able to experience this together, and each individual is experiencing it differently, and also settling into the things that they've identified personally that they need to feel successful. And I think as an organization, responding to personal needs so that each individual can bring their best self to work and provide the best support for the work that they do and for those that they serve, I think is the name of the game as we think about the future.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Lindsey.
I would agree with Lindsey. I do believe as we move forward, and I think we've seen it over the last 18 months, the key is going to be flexibility. During this time period, I think employees have really grown to appreciate having autonomy in terms of their work schedule and balancing that on a personal and professional basis. So continuing to grow your leaders to be empathetic, understanding what that flexibility means, because what it might mean for an employee might look very different for an organization. So really that balancing act, I think, is where it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for the leader in terms of when are those moments for command performance that we need all hands on deck to the point in which you can pick and choose where you're spending your time. I do think the standard work week is going to look very differently. And I also believe that one of the biggest challenges I think we're all going to experience is that the work and personal life are so blended. And I think there's benefits from that, but there's also a lot of drawbacks because there's no distinction between when you should turn it off. And I think you see it now even with employees expressing concerns about burnout and not being able to walk away from the computer. So I think that self-care and helping employees establish those work boundaries are also going to be key.
So I agree with everything that's been said so far. Within my organization, though, at Amazon, we have a very different set of challenges when it comes to flexibility. My team hires thousands of people for 12 Amazon locations within the Charlotte area, and they're all frontline workers. So when we think about flexibility and safety, it has a very different context. And so for me, the future of work and what I look at for my team and those that we're hiring is that ability to help individuals find shifts and sites and jobs that make sense for their personal well-being so that they can be on site and be their best selves, but also at the same time have that balance to be with their family as well.
So I think my role on this panel is a little different. Rather than talking about our organization in particular, I'm going to share with you some things that we're seeing with an array of different organizations we're working with. And we have a specialty in workplace strategy and interior design. And we do have some clients who are doing some very creative and very proactive things to bring people back to work safely. But I don't want to sort of sensationalize that or speak in absolutes, because we have a lot of clients. Their leases are not up, they're not moving, and they're choosing not to make physical adjustments to their workplace until they've got more data about what a post-COVID workplace needs to provide for its people. But the conversations we are having with clients who are in the midst of change have four sort of common threads. And the first one, I'll go into them generally, and then if the conversation moves in that direction, I'll give you some more specifics. But one of them is that they're making robust improvements in technology and the apps that they're using to support a more mobile workforce. The second is that they're implementing new features to support wellness and well-being, which tend to be sort of separate things. And some of those are physical changes that they're making, and some of them are policy changes that they're making to support a healthier workforce. And then third, they're all, as all of us are, I'm sure, they're in various stages of developing more flexible attitudes about work. That's been a real stretch for me. What they're learning is that as they give people more choices about how and when and where they're working, even within the workplace, you're not anchored at your desk anymore. They are having to provide more variety in the kinds of spaces and the tools they're providing for people. And they're working to make their office a bit more of a magnet. So more branded spaces that extol the virtues and the values and the mission of a company, and trying to amp up engagement, because that's one thing that's suffered as we've all been sort of separated from one another. And then lastly, there's a pretty common conversation or a consensus that the workplace is not going to disappear, because it's going to continue to be the place where people build friendships and relationships, and where perhaps creative collaboration is at its best, and where people are building sort of their engagement and loyalty to the organization. So it may not be as permanent a destination, but when you do go, it should be a really immersive experience.
Excellent. Thank you. Really, really insightful answers. And I think this definition, how we redefine work and what changes we're envisioning in the future, really is different for different industries and different people. And I think we're seeing that in the responses. So I wanted to talk a little bit also, and you kind of touched on this in your answers, about keeping employees motivated during this time. The pandemic has led to record numbers of employees leaving their jobs. We're seeing turnover like we've never seen it before. So much so that we even have a term for it now, the Great Resignation. And based on a recent global survey conducted by Adobe, enterprise workers and small business leaders are so dissatisfied with their time at work. They feel like they're spending more hours working on unimportant tasks. They're struggling with work-life balance. They feel that technology is the missing piece to achieving productivity. During the pandemic, many employees who never telecommuted were able to do so. And this what we academics like to call quasi-experiment, right? So the pandemic led to this quasi-experiment in work-life and telecommuting. Many discovered that working from home allows them to achieve work-life balance that they couldn't achieve otherwise. And they really enjoyed being present for their families while also working comfortably from home. And these employees may not look forward to coming back to the office full time. However, I've also heard from other people that they can't wait to get back to the office. They're tired of the distractions at home, and they feel that this is very isolating. And so, VPs of HR are really feeling this tension between meeting employee needs, which are very different, right? People have very different feelings about working from home, and organizational needs. So my question for the panelists is, what are organizations doing to help employees cope with some of the demands created during the pandemic? And what are you doing to try to engage and retain employees during the Great Resignation?
I'm happy to start. I think the first thing that we're trying to do is, one, understand the continuum of emotions that exist out there, but probably most importantly, really encouraging employees to take that first step. We're doing a voluntary reentry, and we do recognize that every employee has sort of a different risk profile based upon family members' eligibility for the vaccine. So we've tried to be very respectful for that, but we're also looking for ways that those employees that feel safe can come back into the workplace just to exercise, to get that muscle memory back. And the thing that we've heard more than anything is that many employees were probably most anxious about that return and not knowing what to expect. So I think we're trying to encourage baby steps. We've done a lot of work around wellness, bringing in professional speakers to help employees in terms of different tips, as well as emphasizing benefits that have always been there, but I don't think employees were aware of them until there's really a need. So really emphasizing the need for, psychological support during this time, working through our wellness centers. So it's the baby steps. And I think we're trying to acknowledge where employees are, but also trying to push them to reconnect, come into the workplace if you feel comfortable, do the baby step, come in for a day, rearrange the office, get it back to the place where it was. And what we continue to hear from our employee group is they've completely lost sight of the value that they had of those interactions and the excitement of walking around the corner and seeing a teammate that you hadn't seen in so long. During this pandemic, it was easy to maintain a relationship, but it was really hard to build it. And so I think reestablishing those connections, we've been trying to do in baby steps, but if anything, trying to encourage people to take that first step.
I'll expand upon that, Kathy. I think you make a really great point around the balance of individual needs, right? I think we've learned that one size doesn't fit all. It was very employer-centric pre-pandemic about where we worked, right? It wasn't really a conversation about where the employee wanted to work, broadly anyway. And now we're realizing there are individual needs, and going back to not only where people feel comfortable and safe, but also productive. And so it's that balance between those things that we're trying to get a handle on through this. But it's also, I think we forget that it's not that we've just faced a pandemic, right? We also have faced a number of other things in our macro environment that have impacted our thought processes, that have impacted our emotional wellness. And so we've created space, even virtually, and frankly, I think we've done it better virtually because we needed to at this time. People needed support differently in the office than they did pre-pandemic. And so because there's all of these things happening at one time. And so what we recognized is that we needed to create space for people to have conversations that were different than those that they were having before in the office. We needed to create space for our teams to have conversations around the things that they were struggling with personally that inevitably someone else was struggling with as well. And we were bringing those people together to create relationships, to provide space to have dialogue about things that were impacting them, and ultimately provide a supportive culture. We wanted to make sure that we not only focused on continuing to be productive, but also continuing to have an engaging workplace that supports their employees, and also shows that they care deeply about their workforce. And so those are some of the things that we've implemented during this time that I think have really, this time gave us the opportunity to create and innovate around the ways we engage with each other. But of course, we too are struggling with how do we bring people back into the workforce when each individual really has different needs and different wants and different ways that they're most productive. And so we too are going through pilots right now to test theories. We know that it needs to be, as we mentioned earlier, flexible. We know it needs to be tech-enabled. Laura, you mentioned the tech enablement piece of this and how that's so critical for engagement. And then also balancing what Tara and Kathy and Phil have also mentioned, being the balance between that wellness and safety for the individual as well. And ultimately, what's going to make the company collectively successful during the balance of all of those things. It's a tough equation right now and harder than we've ever faced. And so the realities of that are playing out in what we're seeing in this, this environment deemed the Great Resignation. We saw a flip. We saw a very highly engaged workforce in the beginning because of some of these things that we're doing. But we also know that a lot of these things that we've given access to can get stale. And so we have to continue to reinvent.
Yeah, from our perspective at Amazon, I've agreed with everything that's been said so far. And for us, we're against some really unique challenges, right? Because all of our employees within our sites are frontline workers. And so we can't ship packages from home. We can't get them to your front door without every one of our team members being active and on site and helping us get that work done. And so flexibility for our teams looks really different. And I touched on a little bit in my introduction information, but what we're doing is looking at different ways to make shifts and the number of hours worked per week or per month work for each individual. And so for some of our sites, we have this flexible part-time model where as long as you're picking up 3 4-hour shifts per month, you get to maintain your job with us and you get to pick what days and what times you pick up those 3 shifts, all the way up to a permanent 40-hour per week model where you have the same set schedule every single week and you know exactly what that is. And then we have other opportunities like volunteer time off, or the opportunity to get extra time. So if you're an individual that likes overtime, we often have opportunities for that. Or if you're looking to work a few less hours, we have that too. And that flexibility allows our employees to be able to decide what works best for them and their families so they can have a great career and a lot of upward mobility, but at the same time, be able to support that balance. And it's a really interesting model that is definitely working for us right now.
I'll speak a little bit to employee engagement from our company's perspective and to also sort of the generational differences in what people seem to need in our industry. I still feel that people need to feel like they're a part of something that matters. And right now we're working extra hard to make people feel that they're part of something. And so from very early on, I was sort of impressed with the leadership team. They said, you know, we're not going to stop our traditions. Instead of letting COVID be an excuse not to do something, we're going to find a way, creative way to do it in some kind of a virtual or hybrid format. So we've run now at least 2 United Way campaigns virtually, and maybe just 1. And maybe it was 2 Arts and Science Council campaigns. And you know, we've continued to organize 5Ks. We continue to have what we call our gallery meeting, where people come together to announce people who are newly registered or having a child or just moved or just arrived. So we're having to find ways to do it virtually. And I don't think it's quite as engaging, but people do seem to crave it. Just that little bit of engagement with people they might not otherwise see in the course of their work, but they used to just run into, you know, in unscripted ways. And then the generational piece of it is that in our industry, we have a lot of less experienced young professionals, emerging professionals who need to learn as much as they can in the next 3 years in order to qualify for their exam and pass it. And so they're taking the initiative when they can to come into the office so they can learn by osmosis. And I was pleased, without any real push from us, more experienced people were coming in knowing they needed that resource and actively engaging with those people to help them along their career path. I'm sure every business is very different, but that's a unique need that we had that is sort of generationally unique.
Excellent. Thank you for those responses. I wanted to circle back to something that Tara mentioned, and then also come back to some of the generational differences that Phil mentioned. So Tara, you mentioned that at Amazon, you're focusing on fewer hours per week, or that's how you're helping employees achieve that work-life balance, is maybe focusing on shifts and maybe putting shifts back to back so that people can work maybe Monday through Thursday, which made me think of this push for a 4-day work week. So as far back as the 1950s, President Nixon was talking about this as something that we need to do, that this is going to improve our quality of life, this 4-day work week. And that really, focusing on, what we call deep work, like focusing on the most important projects and not some of these extra things like constantly answering emails or attending meetings, will enable us to work fewer hours per week. And a recent study found that really we do real work only about 4 hours a day. And we spend the other 4 hours answering emails and maybe attending meetings that we don't necessarily need to attend. So I'm really glad to hear that Amazon is focusing on helping their employees work fewer hours per week. Phil, I wanted to circle back to your comment about some of the generational differences. And I think this is what we're seeing. We're seeing that a lot of the millennials, they're expecting more autonomy, they're expecting more flexibility. However, when we look at generational differences between people who are maybe wanting to come back to work face to face and others who are maybe wanting to continue working from home, there are a lot of millennials who are looking forward to coming back to work face to face. And so what my question for the panelists is, what are we doing in order to help our employees during the onboarding process? So for example, recruiting and onboarding employees are two really important processes. And so if you have to do this virtually, how do you socialize new employees if everyone is not necessarily in the office face to face?
I'm going to defer to the three of you first in hopes that you have a better answer than me.
I'm happy to jump in. We had very quickly transitioned all of our onboarding activities to a virtual setting, and ways that we've continued to engage new hires are by finding them a mentor in the organization that's not within their direct business unit. We have created these coffee chats where it brings people together in a more casual forum to talk about, anything that's going on with them personally or work. So it creates just connection within the organization and across business lines. We also have intentionally brought groups of those that were being onboarded back together, so that they can talk about their experiences, so we can hear from them about what they need differently or more of in that virtual experience. And then also, of course, we are providing the opportunity on pilot basis to come back into the office. And I will tell you that it is consistent with what you mentioned, Dr. Stanley, in that millennials tend to want to be back in the office more so than, I would say, other generations. What I think is really interesting here on the generational piece, though, is we've seen a breakdown of behaviors across generations as it pertains to virtual work. The virtual working environment has really, like I said, sort of broken down these traditional behaviors, and we've seen it really is more about the individual versus a group of individuals. But I think that the piece that everyone is looking for to get better at, whether it's virtually or whether we get back into a setting, is the opportunity for growth. That's the greatest challenge that we have in this virtual environment, is that people don't feel like they have the opportunity to be in front of the right people at the right times, or that they're drawing the connections internally to define their growth path.
I think, go ahead, Kathy.
I was going to say very similar to what Lindsey said. We have done everything we could to put all the onboarding tools, digital, doing everything virtually that we would try to do face-to-face online, and drawing those personal connections. We're really trying to get new employees immersed quickly. So it's getting their involvement in employee resource groups, looking for virtual opportunities for them to give back within the communities. Happy hour, DoorDash luncheons. So it's really, we had to shift our thinking about, okay, we don't have the face-to-face interaction, but what can we do to create the virtual interaction that gives the same sort of, maybe not the perfect, but the same sort of powerful impact to cross-reference and meet new people. And so we've even done speed dating, where it's a networking opportunity where people break out into small groups with senior leaders to hear about senior leaders' career paths. So those are some of the things we try to do right out of the door to get employees feeling and touching our culture and getting exposed to other teams. The other part that I think we're doing fairly well, and employees appear to be appreciative of, is we're acknowledging that the work world has changed. I believe a lot of employers have approached this, that we want to go back to work. We want to go back to the office. And there's not an acknowledgement of everything that has occurred over the last 18 months. And so I think employees want to hear that the workplace is going to look different. And while we might not have all the answers, I mean, but it's going to be different. And that's exciting. So we've really tried to move away from the comeback and let's reestablish ourselves to where we were 18 months ago, rather really acknowledging the fact that a lot has changed. And we want to continue to spur that innovation, but recognize that flexibility is going to be key.
Yeah, we too have had to change a lot in terms of our onboarding process. Pre-COVID, potential candidates would come into our office and we would do full presentations and walk them through all of the benefits of working for Amazon as a company, and then help them through the application process and find them the appropriate roles and sites and help them download apps onto their phone. And through the pandemic, we've had to move a lot of that into technology. And so one benefit of that is that it takes a lot less time for a candidate to get through the process, and they have everything at their fingertips and they can do it on their own time and not during a time where I have a team member on site that can help them do that. Now, on the other side, it takes away a bit of that personal touch. And so when candidates do come to my office to begin their new hire paperwork, their I-9s, and take their badge photo and their oral drug test, we want to make sure that they're having a really great experience, because that's going to be their first time meeting with an Amazonian in real life. And so it changes that relationship piece. And so by candidates having a more of an online experience, we want to make sure that they've got more information at their fingertips. So we're providing more videos and easier to use applications and online trainings leading up to their day one. So candidates can feel really prepared that when they come on site as a true Amazonian, that they feel comfortable and know what to expect in that experience.
The only thing that is a little different than that I can think of that some people in the audience might share is that we have 5 offices, and we used to just naturally form project teams that are physically close together by and large, at least. And so what we learned a couple months in was, wow, we can build these national project teams and really get our best people in the right places at the right time. And so people all of a sudden were working with people they'd never met before, across the whole country. And so for the onboarding experience, it's now much less physically isolated. People are meeting folks from all around the company. I don't, I'd have to ask them specifically, is that making you feel more connected and more loyal, or are you building friendships? But it has been a wrinkle that we've been able to, we sort of backed our way into and learned that people liked it.
Excellent. Thank you. I remember when I worked for Deloitte, and we had this national, orientation where all of the new hires would go to Scottsdale, Arizona, and we would spend a week there. And it was just fantastic. It was the most wonderful socialization experience, because you were able to meet people at your level from all over the country, and you kept in touch with those people. So you had this amazing network. And so it makes me really sad to think, wow, Scottsdale may not happen anymore. We're really having to adapt to remote work. So Phil, thank you for your comments on teamwork and collaboration. I think that's an excellent segue into one of the other questions I wanted to ask, which is about collaboration. So now that people are working remotely, how are organizations engaging employees so that they're able to collaborate? The research on creativity tells us that people tend to be more creative in a face-to-face environment. There's just something about that face-to-face interaction and seeing people and reading body language and facial expressions that maybe we're not getting through Zoom. It's not translating. And so how are we helping our employees maintain that creativity? And this also has implications for the physical workspace, Phil, which you may be able to address.
Yeah, in spaces that we have in design or in projects where we're doing renovations, we're finding that what used to be in-person collaboration spaces like soft seating in front of a whiteboard, we're now having to integrate technology into every single collaboration space, meaning monitors and cameras and audio at least. Because we're almost always going to have somebody who's participating remotely, which wasn't really the case in the past. We tended to get people together who could conveniently and sort of spontaneously gather. So that's one of the biggest ways in which technology, when I reference that as a common thread with all of our clients, that's one of the most visible, probably most experiential ways that that we're having to inject new technology into existing spaces to allow collaboration. And I do think, in my experience, when we are partly in person and have a few remote participants, we're a lot better than when we're all remote. It's a lot easier to be all remote. You know, we've had to get some new cameras so that we can zoom in on whiteboards and things like that and actually see people's faces. But you know, we're doing it as much as we can. I'm old-fashioned enough that I it's hard for me to imagine being as creative and dynamic as we want to be when we're not together to feed off of each other's ideas and build on each other's ideas. We're having to wait till it's our turn to speak and all those things. But you know, it's a good hybrid because now people who are working remotely are not isolated. They actually can still participate in a brainstorm or a creative session. Yes,
absolutely. Thank you for that. Zoom has certainly created a lot of interesting situations. Absolutely. So I'd like to extend that question to the other panelists. Tara, you know, at Amazon, how you know, what is Amazon doing in order to manage this, you know, the challenges related to collaboration and creativity?
Yeah, so it's a bit of what Phil's sharing, right? So when possible, I know being in person, just being able to pop down and see somebody gives me a lot of energy. That random just moment to be able to spend time together. Hey, let me bump this off you. Let me ask your opinion on it is way more of a personal experience than, you know, sending someone a team message that says, hey, let me know when you have a second, I've got a question, and it makes it a lot less personal. But at the same time, the way that we're set up, all of my personal peers are across the Southeast. So I've got 9 peers across the Southeast, and we do a lot through instant message and collaboration that way, or setting up video calls like this. I do have to agree though that in-person environment where you can sit back and relax and it doesn't feel uncomfortable to have an awkward silence because you can see that everybody's thinking intently about sharing something provocative or important than just trying to fill the dead space because you feel like you have to on a Zoom call makes a big difference. So I think it's a personal thing, but it's also being strategic and making the space to do it. When you're in a remote environment, it doesn't come naturally, right? Like it's a natural thing to walk down the hall and see somebody or pop by somebody's cubicle. But when you're remote, you assume that everyone's on calls constantly, or they've got family in the background that they're trying to manage. And so you don't reach out as much because you're afraid of overwhelming them with something. So making space to be able to have those conversations, I think, is really important. And if you have direct team members, checking in on them. If you haven't chimed with them or, you know, sent them a message in a day or two, even if it's just, hey, thinking about you, let me know if you need anything. It doesn't have to be anything really impactful or profound. Just the fact that you're caring about those within your network, I think it is really important.
Okay. Thank you for that, Tara. I think a lot of our water cooler moments have kind of disappeared. A lot of things were facilitated at the water cooler, and we don't have those moments anymore.
And I thrive off of those moments personally. Like that is what makes my day. So being back in an office or in a hybrid model is really important to me personally.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree. Okay. Kathy or Lindsey? do you have any comments or any insight into what we can do to foster collaboration in this new work environment?
And during this window of time, we've really looked at how we can do like competitions of Future Fest or items around Hack Fest. So trying to bring employees together in a fun sort of competitive way to solve a work-related program. We've also worked with an outside vendor called Exec Online, where we've taken our high potentials through a series of development programs and having them work together virtually to solve on a work-related problem and come together and create a pitch. So we've tried to look for those type of items where employees are still solving a problem, but we're sort of forcing that interaction in a very sort of, time-bound period of time.
So I'll offer a slightly different perspective in reframing what collaboration or innovation or creativity can look like. We were fortunate to have Adam Grant with us at our annual virtual values conference. We host a values conference for our employees every year and a half. And it's really centered around individual growth and continued growth for the organization. Adam Grant's his recent book, Think Again, it introduces this idea that maybe innovation doesn't happen in a group setting all the time, right? So if you are given a problem and you can individually bring it back and think through options and opportunities, if you bring back the thoughts that you had individually to a group, does it create a faster uptake to innovation? And so I think continuing to find ways intentionally to build that into your practices can help foster the innovation at a faster speed. And we also really subscribe to this idea of the growth mindset. And so the growth mindset isn't about collective, it's about individual, right? So individually seeing the opportunities to continually get better. And so, of course, we are a very collaborative organization, but I think also reframing to understand the individual impacts that can be seen in this environment as well helps us, think a little differently and not sit in the, the exhaustion I think we all feel by the screen. So it's just a bit of a reframe. And we do believe that collaboration is essential. And we do, obviously, I shared some of the ways that we're trying to intentionally put that into our practices and continue to try new ways to engage. But I also think there's some real value in speed to innovation in, giving the problem first to the individual and then bringing it back together.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Lindsey. Yes, we've really had to rethink innovation during these times and how we can be innovative remotely, how we can be creative remotely. Also, I'm a huge fan of Adam Grant. That is fantastic that you were able to bring him in as a speaker. He is probably one of the most, if not the most productive academics out there. He's just incredible. And he's done a lot of work on deep work. So what it means to actually really focus on a task. And, decades ago, we thought that multitasking was the way to go. And now he's talking a lot about how, no, multitasking is not the answer. You really have to focus. You have to carve out long chunks of time to really focus on a task. And he spends one semester, he teaches. The next semester, he does nothing but research. There's no teaching, so he can really focus on his research. So just a really interesting, brilliant guy. So I wanted to kind of circle back and talk about, we talked a little bit about engaging new employees in this new environment and how to keep them connected to people in this new remote situation. Going back to that onboarding question, let's take us, let's go one step further. What are we doing to attract and retain new talent during the Great Resignation? So this is a huge banking community. There's often a lot of movement from one bank to another. And so what are organizations doing in order to be an employer of choice?
I'm happy to kick us off with that one. So Amazon, we have over 750,000 frontline employees across the United States right now. And so just 2 weeks ago, we announced that we are going to start providing expanded career choice opportunities for employees. And so what this means is that Amazon is going to pay for bachelor's degrees, books, fees, everything for any frontline employee after they've been with the company for just 90 days, which is really exciting. And so we know that maybe employees won't be with us for long-term stints while they're working within our sites, but we can help prepare them for whatever that next career is at the same time. And so one of our tools that we're looking at to help engage and retain great talent is to help them prepare for careers either within the company, so moving on to arms like AWS or mechatronics and robotics to help support our sites, or for other careers like nursing or other IT opportunities. So it's really a great opportunity for our employees that are supporting us as frontline workers to also be able to have that opportunity to expand their career where they have interest.
Excellent. Thank you, Tara.
Our efforts to retain is one, I think we've focused heavily on trying to get new hires quickly sort of immersed in our culture and just sort of feel the difference in the sense of community, and really highlighting the purpose of our work and trying to draw that deeper connection to the work that the individual is being brought into and the difference that they're making in society. The other part is mobility, and we have worked hard to make sure that all our teammates have individual development plans, and we're working on, for those that really want to make a career shift, supporting them in that career shift. And so each year, we look very closely at how we're moving our talent. And in the last, even during the time of the pandemic, we still saw mobility close to about 25 to 28% of our workforce moving into new roles. So really driving the opportunity to grow and learn. The other part that I think we've really tried to do is drive home not just that professional connection of having employees feel like they're part of something bigger or that there's a career path for them, but also personally, and demonstrating the fact that we're in tune to their personal needs and modernizing our benefits. Examples of that is moving from infertility to fertility benefits, highlighting the fact that how can we help you grow your family, increasing adoption assistance to $35,000. As well as so much what Tara said, really focusing on education. So offering 529 support, student loan pay down, as well as just recently, this will be the third year, offering all employees equity. So, in the past, equity was a part of our compensation plan, typically for our executives. So based upon company's financial performance, all employees at all levels are issued shares. And in the last 3 years, we've issued 100 shares to each employee. And so demonstrating that owner mentality and the founder mentality and connecting with the results have also been sort of key things that we've tried to do to hang on tightly to our key talent.
I could almost say echo Kathy's comments. We're doing so much of the same. I think obviously we have got to turn our attentions to the attraction strategies, be more creative. And it really is we've heard over and over, whether it's we read it, we're provided the data around it, that employees want to feel connected to what you're accomplishing as an organization. They want to feel that there's a connection to the community. And so those things, as a healthcare organization during a global pandemic, it's really, it's important for us to highlight how we're supporting our country and coming out of this. And we were at the forefront of the the ventilator program with the administration at the beginning of the pandemic. We have created opportunities that are going to bring domestic manufacturing back here to the States and provide access to PPE faster and with greater quality to our health system. So people care about these things, right? So we're really focused on being able to highlight the things that we're doing to contribute to a better and healthier society. And so also, I think when it comes to retain, you know, a lot of the things that Kathy was talking about, we've done an evaluation of our benefits to make sure from a DEI perspective, from a diversity, inclusion, and equity perspective, that we are competitive, that we don't have significant gaps. And so obviously we identify them and we'll chip away at them over time. We also have really doubled down on our efforts to support diversity, equity, and inclusion in our workplace, and identifying ways to continue to provide opportunity for growth and development across all of our employees. And so, you know, I don't want to spend more time. It's really, you know, it sounds like we're doing a lot of the same things, which are, you know, what we're hearing are the important things to be focused on as an employer.
Okay. Thank you for that, Lindsey.
I think the thing I could
I'm
add
sorry.
that might be a little different is that, and there may be a lot of people represented in the audience whose companies are like this. Historically, when we have surveyed our people about why did you pick Little and why do you get excited about coming to work every morning, the answer is resoundingly, oh, it's the people. It's the diverse array of different kind of people that I get to learn from, and it's sort of a teaching and learning experience every day. And if you go to our job postings, usually they'll link you to a video of people in the office, and they're having pinups and doing whiteboard sessions and sketching together and building models. Well, it's like a big lie, you know, because if you come in today, there's 10 of us here. So we have had to kind of pivot and amplify more of what you all were talking about in terms of meaningful work. So we're finding that in the absence of that little competitive advantage that we'd like to think we have culturally, we're having to amplify our commitment to, you know, creating environments that are better for human health, better for energy conservation, water conservation, social equity. And that has become sort of our only magnet really right now when people can't be together, is to give them an opportunity to do meaningful work. And then again, we're nowhere near you guys on the benefits side of the equation, but we're having to revisit it every year because people's needs are changing and evolving so quickly.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you for that, Phil. I think, you know, I want to direct the next two questions to Lindsey and Phil, because Lindsey, I wanted to come back to something you said earlier about being a part of the healthcare industry, and you want to show that you're committed to beating this thing. And we're certainly looking to, you know, to healthcare, to our providers, for information about how to come back to work, how to be safe, which also relates to, you know, Phil, and you can provide some perspective here. How do we revamp our physical workspace in order to be safe so that we can safely bring our employees back to work? And so, Lindsey, I wanted to come back to you. How are we using data in order to determine how to bring our employees back to work? I mean, you know, I'm thinking about this from a human resources perspective. We try to make data-driven decisions, and we use benchmarks and metrics such as cost per hire and annual voluntary turnover to make strategic HR decisions. And so how are we using healthcare data and other data in order to make decisions about how to bring employees back safely while also meeting their individual needs?
Yeah, it's a great question, and obviously something that we're all combating together as a new part of the equation, right? And so we have, sorry, I have a quarantine child here with me. This is an example of what we're all challenged by today, right? So we have partnered with our health systems to bring education to our employees. So we are so grateful for the opportunity to have access to foremost experts in this field talking about what we're dealing with in the pandemic. And so we've brought information forward by our health systems to help people cut through the noise, right? Give access to real data and information so that they can make good personal decisions. And so we've doubled down on that with our internal experts. So we continue to bring opportunities to bring education forward based on data, based on real information. So, I will tell you, I don't watch the news for information around the pandemic or the vaccines. I turn to our experts, which I'm really very lucky to have access to. And so we have provided that to our employees, in addition to continuing to listen to our employees through our engagement survey. We partner with Glint, and we've rolled out a biannual survey, and we've been able to pivot to asking questions pertinent to what people need now during this pandemic and during everything that we've experienced over the last year and a half from a macro environment standpoint. And so that data has been really critical in us being able to make good decisions for our employees and also address the needs that our employees say they have. So we're taking, a scientific approach to what we're hearing and what we know about the vaccines and the ongoing pandemic, and pairing it with internal data that's coming directly from our employees.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Lindsey. So Phil, how are we using some of this data from healthcare? How are we using that in order to change our physical workspace?
If I interpret data real strictly, one of the biggest ways that we're seeing data play a role in a workplace is the use of sensor technology. And I'm not an expert in sensor technology, but constantly amazed at the amount of data you can gather. So for example, in a workplace, you might learn through occupancy sensors where people are gathering, or you might learn which rooms are used in the most robust fashion. You might discover at a time like this that your focus rooms, where a person can be alone for a little while and take a mask off, are really at a premium. And you can begin to adapt the workplace to provide more of the kinds of spaces where people feel comfortable. I recently heard about an app that syncs up with your custodial staff so that they know on any given day which space was occupied the day before, and they spend their time making sure that space is cleaned, and they're not wasting their time cleaning spaces that nobody even walked into. So when an employee goes into the office the next day, they know if they've reserved a space, and if that space was occupied the day before, then it's clean. Which I found kind of interesting. I've not implemented that. And I think probably there's even people in the audience who could tell me more amazing things that sensors can do that enable a building to kind of optimize its performance every day by adapting to what it's learning about how it's used, when the shades need to go down, when the HVAC needs to kick on in the morning based on how many people come in early. So there's data that's creating, I think in a way, healthier workplaces. The bigger thing that we're seeing in terms of data really comes from the healthcare industry. And you've probably heard of well-certified spaces. Based on a lot of healthcare data and neurological science, we've been given guidance on ways we can create spaces where you're healthier every day when you go home than when you came to work in the morning. And it has a lot to do with clean air. You're breathing air that's probably cleaner than you're breathing at home, much cleaner than outside, clean water, whatever you have in your pantries, it's nutritious. We're doing a lot of things that cause people to get up and move around over the course of a day, not just sit, stand desks, but 3 or 4 different work settings that we encourage them to go leverage for different kinds of work they may do. The first week we moved in here, I heard a woman say, wow, I got all my steps in this week and I never even went to the gym. But it also, there's a mental health aspect to that as well. And so we're providing lots of spaces that are more meditative, where you can just go relax for 10 minutes, or mother's rooms are more frequently being seen in the workplace. And it's surprising that even policies, like if you're going to take first of all, we don't want you to take a red eye because we want your sleep patterns to be consistent, because that's a big cornerstone of health. And if you're going to take a red eye, we want you to work from home the next day. Well, that was 2 years ago. So now they would be anyway. But and making sure that we amped up the mental health aspect of our employee assistance program. That stuff, all sort of the physical environment and your policy environment can be interwoven to really create a measurably healthier workforce.
Okay, excellent. All right. Thank you for that, Philly. Absolutely. So I think the smart buildings and the access to technology that we have now, and even the Apple Watches, better enables us to monitor people's health and well-being. Even, as a researcher, as an academic, it helps us to gather data so that we can examine like what's good for employees, what's bad for employees. But it's interesting to hear you talk about changes in the physical workspace designed to improve health and wellness. When I worked in corporate, we had a nap room in our building. I never used it, but I thought it was fascinating, the nap room. I don't know if that's still a thing now. So I wanted to also talk a little bit about, and this is along the same lines of ensuring employee safety as we're bringing people back to work. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the state mandates, the mask mandates and the physical distancing, and this is very fluid. We never know what's going to come next. But how have these state mandates impacted your back to work strategies?
Well, it was one more thing to respond to. So let me just start with that to your initial point. The most recent executive order, which I believe most employers with over 100 employees are still sort of standing by for additional detail from OSHA. But I do believe within our organization, we've moved from a place of encouraging, promoting to a different tone. Whereas the executive order requires you to either mandate it or pursue testing. And so for those that are unvaccinated, prior to the most recent order or issuing of the temporary order, we moved towards only vaccinated employees within our workplace, within the voluntary program. So we had already moved in that direction. I believe that this upcoming requirement is going to require us to be more sophisticated as it relates to testing of our unvaccinated employees. So at Ally, we have close to 76% of our employees that are vaccinated. Similar to Lindsey, we've put a lot of effort to really encouraging employees to get educated. So bringing in medical advisors in group settings to just try to demystify some of the information that's out there. We've also offered incentives, so a $500 incentive for employees that chose that was eligible and was able to be vaccinated. And so now we are now shifting in terms of our tone, in terms of requirements, and really assessing what that means as it relates to conditions of employment on a go-forward basis, as well as trying to understand what it means to verify sort of COVID testing. So it's, I think the one item that the mandate does offer for us is it does create an even playing field. All employers are sort of in the same place. And so as you speak of the Great Resignation and the fear of losing employees because of some of these requirements, and I do believe that's been probably a little bit of the challenge for most employers. To what degree can you really make a strong hardcore requirement in light of the market list? I mean, talent can definitely vote with the feet. Laura, I don't know if I'm answering your question as directly as you'd like, but it is definitely one that we are watching and waiting eagerly to understand for additional guidance from that standpoint. But it has definitely put us in a position to take a much stronger line than we have in the past.
Okay, absolutely. You answered my question, Kathy. It's just one more thing that we have to deal with, right? Okay, all right.
I think the name of the game is being nimble and being prepared to respond to the changing environment. We have, pulled back on mask wearing in the office if you were vaccinated and had an attestation during our pilot period. We had to reinstitute that when obviously we saw the city of Charlotte reinstitute mask wearing indoors. And so to Kathy's point, with the new executive order, we're ready And we are preparing our technology to receive information to document that confidentially, should we need to go to that place with respect to the mandate. But there's still lots of information that we're sifting through with respect to that order. And obviously these things are also playing out in the courts. And so it's a really sensitive time. I think we have to be nimble, we have to be ready, and we have to be informed. And so we're doing as much as we can to educate our employees around what we know today, what we're doing to prepare for that. And we also had commitments to our healthcare system. So beyond the executive order, we have healthcare systems that have mandates in over 22 states based on state level mandates. And so we do have employees that sit in those hospital systems to support our members or our customers, as it were. And so there are requirements that we have based on the work. And so we've just tried to take it a step at a time, be prepared, and be ready to implement as is necessary. But all the while doing as much as we can to provide transparency to our employees around this. This is something that everyone has different feelings on, and we want to make sure that we're providing up-to-date information as we have it, and letting them know the approach that we're taking to review the information and to implement practices.
Excellent. Thank you, Lindsey.
Go ahead, Dr. Stanley.
Oh, no, I was just thanking Lindsey. Please, Tara, we'd love to hear what Amazon is doing.
Yeah, so communication is definitely key, right? So it feels like every week, if not every day, there seems to be new information that comes out. And so similar to Lindsey's environment, prior to August with the new mask mandate, if you were vaccinated within our facilities, you didn't have to wear a mask. Within my particular office, my team and all candidates did have to wear masks as they're going through their new hire experience. But beyond that are the continued safety measures to make sure everybody stays safe, mask, vaccination or not, maintaining 6-foot distance from each other, making sure that we're cleaning on a regular basis, making sure you're coming to work only if you're healthy. And if you're feeling under the weather, to stay home until you get tested. Those are all the additional things that we're doing right now to make sure that all of our employees are staying safe. And it's hard to stay vigilant. I think we're all feeling a bit drained of the constant, we need to be safe, we need to be here, we need to keep 6-foot distance. It goes back to that human interaction, right? Like you want to feel connected, and when you're masked and 6 feet apart, not only can it be hard to hear somebody without yelling, it's hard to have a personal connection point. And so as we look at connecting with candidates and other employees, we need to make sure that we're doing it within that safe policy of protocol.
Okay.
I don't have anything to add to that, Dr. Stanley.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Thank you for that. We are receiving some questions from the audience. So I'd like to share some of those questions. So Cynthia Forbes asks, during this time of the pandemic, what are your companies doing to encourage your employees continuing education or retooling where they may have skill or knowledge gaps preventing them from getting to the next level? Would anyone like to address that question?
I'll speak quickly to it. Most of our development programs are cross-office, so they were already fairly virtual, and people have continued those. I will say that during the past year and a half or two, where people have been so overwhelmed, we stopped pushing them at people and started telling people if and when you want them. When you have the time and the need, they're available on call. And so we've become a little more flexible about what we're delivering and when we're delivering it. And that has resulted in a drop-off. But the ones that are really the spine of our development programs, we're continuing to do virtually. And because they were designed that way originally, they feel pretty good to me. And then each office has its own version of mentoring, and it's kind of a combination. Some people get together in person with a few people who are remote, and sometimes it's all in person, sometimes it's all remote.
That's fantastic. So a little bit similar to Phil, but a little bit different. One of the reasons why we had that big announcement a couple of weeks about expanding our education benefits is because there was an increase in the number of employees that were looking to partake in growing their career and upskilling their skill set. So we've had apprenticeship programs over the course of the last couple of years, in addition to career choice programs. And so because there was such an increase of employees looking to utilize that benefit during the pandemic, we decided to expand it, which is really exciting to help support our teams and what they want to do next.
Laura, for us, we've done a series of career roundtables, so internal job fairs for employees to learn about other areas. We've also had, similar to Phil's comment, we do have mentoring. And then really for those employees that are interested in making a career shift, we'll do a series of just maybe a realistic preview where they're able to shadow employees in that area, as well as maybe move into a cross rotation assignment for a short period of time to see if it's a fit. But I think what is most important that I think we do is we are very clear about where we think work is transitioning to, and giving employees advance notice and giving them the opportunity. All our positions below a certain band are posted. And so really encouraging employees as well to own their own career by using our job posting board. And I'm really pleased to say that, we're close to about 60% of our opportunities here with internal employees at this time.
I won't spend time on the things that we're doing that everybody else is doing. We're obviously trying to be really creative in the way that we deliver content. We've done things like introduced podcast learning instead of it being the traditional learning format virtually. We, of course, do have all of our virtual courses, and they're grouped by interest area. Some of the other things that we've done is we've researched within Workday, which is our HRIS, the ways that we can provide insights to opportunities internally. And so we've turned on what's called an opportunity graft, which shows dynamic movement of real people in real positions across the organization. So we have a career level framework, which suggests if you're here and you want to go here, you have to do these things or demonstrate these competencies. But this is really about seeing the progression of talent within our organization more dynamically and based on what's really happening versus just a ladder on a page. And so that's been a really interesting introduction to our workforce and showing opportunity. And then just finding different ways to provide connection. We know that growth is one of the greatest challenges. We also know that we've seen a number of women drop out of the workforce in this period of time. And so how do we make it an attractive place for women to thrive and grow their careers? And again, that goes back to our efforts around DEI and what we're doing intentionally as a part of the ERG network that we have, bringing it together with our HR teams to build, growth within our programs. And so those are some of the additional things that we're doing to provide access to ways to grow.
Okay, excellent. So thank you for that. I do have another question from the audience, and this relates to something that Lindsey said. Lindsey said that we have to stay nimble. Understanding that, how are companies beginning to prepare, and what do they expect 2022 to be like? I would like to know the answer to that question as well. Please tell me, what should I expect?
If we only had the crystal ball, right?
Yes.
I'll say we expect it to hopefully return back to more engagement in the workplace. We are preparing for that. And again, I think it goes back to greater flexibility, greater technology, ensuring access to ways to collaborate and share ideas across the organization. We want to continue to enhance our culture of a growth mindset and give people opportunities to grow their careers and also, achieve their goals and their roles. But I do think it comes back to, having a hybrid type workforce. We've heard that term ad nauseum, I'm sure, in the past year as we've all prepared. But I do think that there will be office work. There will be ways to connect in person, but we will continue to innovate around ways to be effective across a hybrid workforce, understanding that we will also have many virtual workers.
Okay, excellent.
Here's an idea. We have a client who has a certain group of employees who really want to be in the office all the time, and others who want to be there on a regular basis, if not every day. And they've created a space that's more like a big library almost, or with soft seating, very flexible furniture that's easy to move, lots of really good AV, so that if you want to come to an office that's bustling, where you get the energy that you're looking for, you go to that particular space, that area, and you can hotel in there. So when you go in, you're not going to have the experience I had like last Friday, where I came in and there was nobody even knew I was here. So that's something people might do, is think about one thing we're asking our leaders for two things. Number one is to individualize their plans and expectations for each person. We're a smaller company, there's 400 of us. We can do that. The other one is something I'm struggling with, and that's be patient. Don't expect us to be where we want to be in 6 months or a year or even 2 years. So I'm having to practice some patience. But then, customizing your space around the people who want to come in and what they want and need is probably a great idea to make it a bit more of a magnet for their return.
For me, I really do wish I could forecast, but I never would have guessed what the last 18 months would hold. So I would say, looking forward, it really is about sort of driving core competencies in your organization, flexibility and acknowledging the need for flexibility, empathy, leaders becoming even more empathetic and being connected with their teammates. I do believe that is one of the key components to retaining talent. And then agility. I mean, I have never, ever, I thought I had seen it all being in the HR chair, and I have learned to grow to become even more comfortable with ambiguity and the ability to be able to make quick decisions on the best data that's available. And so I think it's going to be a continuation of just building those muscles in the organization.
And from my perspective, it's just continuing to be prepared for more change. I think, to everyone's point, we might not know what's coming, but what we do know is coming is more change and more unpredictability. So being able to pivot and turn and make fast decisions in those moments that are also good decisions for those within our company are going to be really important.
Okay. Absolutely. Thank you, Tara. Yes, we've all learned how to pivot. I learned how to move my classes online very quickly. So I think we've all had to adjust. We have one last question, which we can probably respond to pretty quickly. Are there any tips on program recommendations for managing and supervising remotely?
I think that we have gone out, we've looked in the marketplace, and there's a lot of great research. I think the value of the last 18 months is it has created an even playing field for all leaders. We're sort of in the same place in terms of building empathy. I think that's a great starting point. The other is best practices and really bringing your leaders together and getting them to talk about what works best. And what I'm seeing is what works best in our call center is very different from what you see within our support groups. So it's about bringing our leaders together and having them sort of share their best practices. Of course, we're giving them tips as it relates to engagement and pulling the team together, but as it relates to productivity measures, performance management, sort of check-in points, we're really sort of, pulling our leaders together and asking them to share their experiences for others to grow and learn from.
I would say practicing intentionality. I think, we had a large workforce that was virtual pre-pandemic. We flipped a switch. We all went virtual for the most part. And it's so interesting how much we've learned in this last 18 months versus the last 17 years where we had a large virtual workforce. And it's really about setting an intention, being really clear, communicative, open. And I think Kathy mentioned something really important, empathetic and humble, recognizing that we don't all have answers as leaders and that we've got resources that we can reach to for support, and know that you are not alone in this journey. We are all doing it together. I've been fortunate to have a group of those in the community that are outside of this building that I've reached to get feedback and perspective and ideas. And I think the name of the game is to set an intention and recognize you're not alone.
Thank you so much for that, Lindsey. I really feel like this panel has created the sense of community, and that we're all in this together. We're all working to get through this pandemic together, and it certainly has provided a lot of insight into what organizations are doing in order to bring people back to work. So panelists, thank you so much for your very insightful comments and your time today. I've really enjoyed this. So thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Kelly since we're running out of time, and I'll let Kelly wrap up.
Well, thank you, Dr. Stanley and Tara, Phil, Kathy, and Lindsey. Thank you for your insights. I know I learned a lot today. I hope our audience has taken away some of the key messages that you shared. And to our audience, I want to thank our investors and our stakeholders for tuning in today. We want to hear from you. Did you find today's conversation useful? What other topics would you like for us to schedule? You will be receiving emails regarding future programming from across the Alliance platform. So we look forward to seeing you in person as well as doing virtual programs. We know that you have a lot of choices in terms of how you spend your day. So we're very grateful that you started your day with us. So with that, I wish everyone to stay well and stay safe. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.